Hey, welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast.
We are here coming to you live.
The Kansas City Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. You only win a Super Bowl 2 times every 5 years, right? Oh! The warm-up act is over. Let's bring in Melissa Etheridge, massive Chiefs fan. Melissa,
Super Bowl champion, 2-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
And he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score!
and we'll see you next week. But until then, as always, go Chiefs.
Welcome into a live St. Patrick's Day edition of the Intangibles. It is St. Patrick Mahomes Day. I've got my green eye on. I'm virtually pinching Christian, which now sounds illegal now that I say it out loud. But my co-host Christian Ainsworth is here with me. Hey, make sure if you're doing some celebrating today, you're taking in some green beer or some corned beef or whatever, you do it safely. Get you a designated driver. Nothing's worth losing over there. Just want to throw that out there. If you are partaking in some festivities today, which we'll be partaking in some Intangibles festivities today. Christian, are you doing anything? You don't have children. You aren't married. Are you enjoying your life a little bit?
Yeah, well, so I got to enjoy my St. Patrick's Day on Saturday because I actually have work tomorrow, unfortunately. So I wasn't able to hit the Borg and go downtown in Columbia or do anything fun.
Wow. Those are hitting the Borg in downtown Columbia. Yeah, you know what? You're not living. I don't think you're living to the life to the fullest there. But okay, cool. Well, I'm not a big St. Patrick's Day guy, not Irish, but back in college, always is a good excuse to drink. But if you are doing so, make sure you're doing so responsibly. Excuse me. Real quick, before we kind of get into today's topics, want to just kind of recap some of the moves that have happened the last time we've had a podcast here, because the Chiefs have just kind of been trickling out the news here lately. There's been a number of a couple of moves over pretty much since we had the OG hour. So you've got Kareem Hunt signing, you've got Juju Smith-Schuster, Jerry Tillery. All three guys are one-year deals, probably close to the veteran minimum, if not the veteran minimum. We don't have to have a ton of hard-hitting analysis on these guys. So let me ask you this, just to kind of recap the moves. Which move do you think will likely have the biggest impact on the Chiefs roster this year of those three additions?
I'd probably say Jerry Tillery, right? Defensive tackle, super long arms, like really kind of a Spagsy sort of defensive lineman. The room is really thin right now as it is, but I could see the Chiefs picking up a running back, picking up a wide receiver in this draft, who we're going to talk about the wide receivers here in a minute. But so those two moves are just kind of like floor raisers. You know what I mean? Like, hey, at least Sky Moore's not going to be taking 70% of the snaps this season, hopefully. Hey, at least we're not banking on Elijah Mitchell coming in and changing the world with his injury history. It's just like, hey, here are some buffers. If anything happens, we've got guys, veterans that can come in, take legitimate snaps and be okay, and at least are familiar with the system. But Jerry Tillery seems like it could be an impact, no?
Well, I definitely think that there's a shot that he plays the most snaps out of these guys, just given like the state of the roster of those positions, right? Like wide receiver, Juju's probably coming in wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6. Kareem, you're hoping is coming in and being running back 3, running back 4, maybe. Mm-hmm. Whereas Tillery right now is like defensive tackle 2 behind Chris Jones, which, Tillery, he can rotate in the inside, the outside a little bit too. I do think there's a chance that he doesn't have as big of an impact because what he's going to be doing will hopefully be a rotational at best, and he'll be closer to me, I think like he's profiling as the Tershawn Ward replacement, the pass rush upside interior guy. And then, because he's not necessarily a big run stuffer or something like that. Maybe that's where they look in the draft, or maybe Mike Pennell comes back after the draft, once those comp picks aren't tied to contracts, et cetera, although I doubt he's getting that size of contract. Anyways, to me, I think one thing that stands out here, and I've heard this analysis a little bit, is, okay, so the Chiefs, specifically Matt Connor, I want to call him to the carpet for this take. But, the Chiefs' issue last year on offense was that they were not fast or explosive. So they brought back Kareem Hunt, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Hollywood Brown. How is that going to fix things? Which I say there is some validity to it. I think if we're going to have that analysis about these signings, it's really going to come down to usage. Last year, I think you can really look at some times where obviously Kareem Hunt was overexposed. Not just the fact that he didn't get a training camp, signed off the couch, but there were several games where he's getting over 20 carries. The overtime game against the Buccaneers, he had 29 carries. He was getting way more workload than a 30-year-old running back should, particularly one who didn't have the training camp. To me, the Juju Smith-Schuster signing and the Kareem Hunt signing, it's ultimately going to come down to what is their usage like. Is Juju Smith-Schuster, I think like Juju, if he's getting 20 to 30 targets for the season and predominantly a sacrificial X and a blocker, I'm okay with that. Now, if he's playing 70, 80% of the snaps, kind of like Justin Watson used to, I think that's where there could be some issues. Same with Kareem Hunt. They know that they trust him. My goal for him, my hope for him is that this year he is the third down back and short yardage, red zone. Like those are probably the best places for him. We've not seen Isaiah Pacheco really get through a season healthy. We also know that they still don't really fully trust his pass protection. So to me, I think like hopefully he is now Samaje Perine, Kareem Hunt is. And then you bring in a back that's more dynamic. Same thing with these two guys, Juju and Kareem Hunt. They should not stop them from drafting a position player at either of those spots. That's my one big thing about it.
Yeah, I agree. This cannot prohibit Brett Veach from, getting Judkins, getting Henderson, or even getting like Noel or McMillan. Some of these guys that, well, not McMillan, he's not going to fall that far, but Harris, Higgins, any of these wide receivers that could possibly fall to them. I'm interested to hear you say that, though, or it's interesting to hear you say that he should be the third down back. I kind of figured that's what the Elijah Mitchell signing was supposed to be. Like he's the new Jerick McKinnon.
And I'm not calling you out on this. Maybe I am. Maybe we should fight more. That's popular on shows.
Okay, yeah.
Argue. But people look at the 49er logo on the side of Elijah Mitchell helmet and go, oh, that's Jerick McKinnon. It's Jerick McKinnon. He's injured a lot like Jerick McKinnon. They could not be separate, more different players. Elijah Mitchell, very little passing production. Not like I think he's had 197 yards in his 49er career. The pass protection isn't nearly there either. And also McKinnon exceeded an outside zone. Elijah Mitchell is more of a gap duo man type of runner. I don't think that's what first off, the obvious of well, he won't be healthy because he's never been healthy. I said the other day, there's a high likelihood that Elijah Mitchell is just this year's Irv Smith, a signing that we kind of got excited about because it was Chiefs news. And then by the end of camp, you're yeah, he's gone. And maybe not, right? And that's fine. I think if you're looking at the running back position in the NFL nowadays, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to use 3 or 4 guys, maybe even 5 guys consistently. I don't think Carson Steele's roster on this roster spot is safe, even if he's mixing in at fullback. We've seen them just go without a fullback for years. And then, Isaiah Pacheco, we've not seen him stay healthy much. There's a lot of opening in that running back room. So I personally don't necessarily think that any of these guys are a lock for the role or a lock for the roster spot. I guess I shouldn't say that. I don't see Kareem Hunt or Isaiah Pacheco not making the team, but Elijah Mitchell, Carson Steele, I wouldn't say that the roster spot is locked up.
Yeah, I would agree. And just to clarify here, I was more talking about the change of pace that Elijah Mitchell can bring. Jerick McKinnon kind of had that same style of good vision, really good burst, just unable to stay healthy.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what Kareem will do too. And if they bring along a rookie, which I think we all expect them to do, to me the name is going to be the most important about the rookie, right? If it's someone like Bashal Tutin, Marcus Yarns, a guy, or even Travion Henderson, if you want to go with a name a lot of people knew, I'm not sure. Even really knowledgeable draft minds like Todd McShay, they see Henderson as a Jahmyr Gibbs, a change of pace back. Maybe not a guy that's your full true bell cow, even though Jahmyr Gibbs showed he could do that the latter part of the year. Do they take a guy like that who's a little bit more of a change of pace guy? You drafted Jaden Blue or something like that. That's a guy that you probably don't want to overexpose to just be the full 3-down back. Now, if you invest something like a day, a round 2, round 3 pick and a guy like Judkins or DJ Giddens or Cam Scatterby or someone like that, that might be someone a little bit more. You're all right, we're going to give this guy the predominant part of the workload. And also, I will continue to pound the table. The Isaiah Pacheco you saw at the end of the year last year, that's not who he is as a player. I think that you can get more out of him. I thought Isaiah Pacheco looked really good to start the beginning of the year, and he had a great finish to the 2023 playoffs, ending in a Super Bowl championship. I still think that there's more on the table there. So I think overall the position can get better if Kareem Hunt is the floor of the position, and he is, and I'm glad for that. I just hope, like, same with Juju, I just hope this doesn't stop them from making a draft move just because they don't have to. I think that they should, and I also think you can't let those guys stop you from getting more explosive and more playing time for those explosive players, right? Like, I'll never get over the fact that Anthony Hitchens was the leading snap getter of the 2021 AFC Championship game that the Chiefs lost to the Bengals, while Nick Bolton didn't play, and then Anthony Hitchens never played another snap of NFL football. Clearly, Nick Bolton was the better guy. Hot take. So
Look at Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy this past year and the year before. It's like, you think Rashee Rice was the worst wide receiver on the team the first 6 weeks of camp or first 6 weeks of the season? Hell no. No, he played fantastic. It took him a while to get into it, but
yeah, and I mean, like the rookies, they got to grow into it, so I get it. Hey, Sean Browning, I see your question in the chat about Stephon Diggs. We're actually going to get into Stephon Diggs here in a little bit with the wide receiver conversation, so hold tight and we will answer that question. But real quick, it is March. It is St. Patrick's Day, which means March Madness is here, and this is a great time to get in on Underdog Fantasy. You see, if you live in Missouri, you still can't gamble on the tournament. How lame is that? But on Underdog, you can still play. You can still lock in on the action this season for the March Madness tournament. Download the Underdog app and sign up now using the promo code Arrowhead Addict to unlock a special offer from us, $1,000 in bonus credits. Just make your first deposit. Join in on the fun when you sign up for our promo code Arrowhead Addict. That's all one word. Claim your special offer today and get up to $1,000 in bonus credits instantly upon your first deposit. You can do all sorts of different things in Underdog. You can pick, whether you think they're going to go higher or lower on their points, their rebounds, their assist. You can insert your favorite player, your favorite team, the underdog. Maybe you want to get a little bit of juice on the underdog in a game on the tournament. You can do that too. Join in on the fun and sign up with our promo code Arrowhead Addict and claim your special offer today to get up $1,000 in bonus credit instantly upon first deposit. Must be 18 years or older, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska and Colorado, and for some games 21 in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Void and prohibited terms apply. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.mpcgambler.org. In Arizona, call the 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 43342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hopeline at 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. They change those up, those call to actions or whatever, and it messes me up a little bit because it's just it's you don't realize how much muscle memory it is.
No, you're good, Price. I thought it was fantastic.
Okay, so wide receiver position. We talked a little bit about Sean Browning's comment here. So we've been slowly going over each position on the roster, kind of evaluating what's on the roster, what's available in free agency, and then connecting it to the draft. Obviously, there's been a ton of free agency moves that have happened in the last week, not just with the Chiefs, but other teams across the NFL. So let's take a look at what the Chiefs got at the wide receiver position right now. Currently on the roster, Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice, Hollywood Brown, Sky Moore, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Nico Remigio. That is your current wide receiver room. 2 departures, Justin Watson and DeAndre Hopkins, are mainly the talent that has walked out the door here. So let me start by asking you this. What is your current assessment of the Chiefs wide receiver position? How would you rate it? Is it above average, below average, etc.?
I would have to give it either a B or an NA, depending on how you view last season. Hollywood Brown has proven that he can kind of show up. He didn't necessarily at the end of the year in the playoffs, but he showed that he's a viable option for Patrick Mahomes. Rashee Rice at the beginning of the season was fantastic, on pace to break 3 or 4 Chiefs records, and then Xavier Worthy showed flashes. If those are your top 3 guys, I think you're okay. The problem is, none of those guys really play the X. Hollywood Brown can be that X guy. He did it when he was in Arizona, but I don't think that's where he's best utilized, and I don't think that's where the Chiefs want to utilize him either. So you look at Juju. Hey, can he come in and play the X he has before? Can he just be a down eater and do that, or are you going to draft somebody? But I really think they need one more person to knock it up to an A. We're really giving Patrick Mahomes some weapons. And we're not just relying on some of these guys who, have been partial throughout the past couple of seasons.
Yeah, I agree. They can go to battle with this wide receiver group. The biggest factor to all of this is just the volatility that's in the wide receiver room. You have Rashee Rice right now, probably getting suspended coming off a major knee injury. We've seen the videos on Instagram. He looks good, but it's just different when you're in the game. You've got Xavier Worthy. Still some legal questions there. I don't think that he's getting suspended, but I wouldn't rule it out. And who knows with that situation, right? Like we've seen those issues go really bad. He's 165 pounds. Hollywood Brown, not really known for staying healthy. Juju Smith-Schuster, not really known for staying healthy. That's your wide receiver room right now, and like obviously we don't have to get into Sky Moore dialogue. It is an uphill battle for him to make the roster out of camp. Now, you get all three of those guys on the field together, Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice, and Xavier Worthy. There is a ton of reason to be really optimistic about the passing offense next year, because I think Rashee Rice was headed towards a path of being a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. He was one of the leading receivers in the league when he went down with injury. He looked fantastic. If you don't know, go back and watch. It's incredible. He's so explosive. That's where you start. And then you start with like, hey, we didn't see those three guys on the field at all together this year. Year 2 of Xavier Worthy. What can he look like? And then Hollywood Brown. Can his role in this offense grow? Because I was a little disappointed with it. The first couple of games looked promising. He more or less disappeared in the playoffs. So those are some areas that it needs to grow. But yeah, I think adding one more person to this room, whether it be a veteran or a rookie, I think that it just, again, will kind of help bridge the gap. And let's be real, like the big gap that they've got here is this offense identity needs to change. This offense cannot flow through Travis Kelce anymore, and they need to prepare for him to retire. You never want Patrick Mahomes to be in that Tom Brady situation in the end in Tampa Bay where he's looking across the league and saying, I'd rather be throwing to Mike Evans right now. I'd rather have Chris Godwin. And there's no such thing, man. There's no such thing as too much weapons. I don't care what they say. So I think a wide receiver, a running back, both are positions that they need to upgrade at. Let's talk about where some of those upgrades can come from. So free agency, there's a lot of names here. If we were doing a 2018, 2019 fantasy football draft, whoa, baby, you would have a stacked team of Stephon Diggs, Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, Brandon Cooks, Josh Reynolds, Tyler Lockett, Elijah Moore, Rondale Moore, and of course, Mecole Hardman. I will say, just to add some dialogue to this, the Chiefs at one time were in on Josh Reynolds. They lost out. He went to the Titans, but they had some interest in him at one point. Obviously, the Mecole Hardman connection is there. Any of those names really move you, Christian? Are one of those guys a name that you want to bring into the Chiefs wide receiver room, and then you could just cross the need off their list?
Ooh, I don't know if there's a single name in here that you can cross it off the list other than Stephon Diggs. Amari Cooper would be cool, I guess. Brandon Cooks, not really. Elijah Moore's the only guy that I would look at and be like, okay, he went to the two most dysfunctional teams in the league. Like, does he have anything left? He's 24 years old. Like, can he come in and actually blossom in the wide receiver he was supposed to be when he got drafted to the Jets? Like, maybe. Possibly, but I don't think you want to be banking on that, basically having another rookie coming into the room, essentially. But Stephon Diggs is the obvious answer, right? I mean,
so first off, Elijah Moore, I completely get it, right? Like that's a guy who, like you said, tons of quarterback dysfunction, still young, and has looked at times like a solid contributor to a wide receiver room. The only thing about him is, again, you kind of get into like slot first guy, right? And I do think that we get a little too obsessed with like, oh, the Seahawks signed Cooper Kupp, but they already have JSN. Who's going to run out of the slot? It's like these teams, they run so much condensed formations that there's definitely plenty of space for both guys. Now, the problem with the Chiefs is Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, and another slot only guy. Now we might actually have too many slot guys. That's certainly a thing. Now, they did have Mecole last year, but Mecole was more of a gadget guy than anything. I agree with you about Elijah Moore. My thing, and to get back to Sean's comment, Stephon Diggs, with some of the antics and stuff off the field, the player that he is, it's just not worth, the juice isn't worth the squeeze to me with coming off the ACL. Do I think like if he comes back to form, like he was on pace to have another 1,000-yard 1,000-yard season with the Texans before he went down with that injury. He's over 30. There's been the drama. Like, I just don't need the wide receiver tweet of the enemy speaks kindly but wields a knife, right? Like the classic wide receiver. Like, I just don't need that vibe. I don't need Trayvon Diggs tweeting about his brother only getting 1 or 2 targets in a Chiefs game. Like, think about it like this. DeAndre Hopkins came in and was leaned on a time in this offense. And as the season went on, he became less and less a factor. He was a quality locker room guy who helped bring along Xavier Worthy and never said a damn thing about not getting his targets. That ain't happening with Stephon Diggs. And it could very much go the same way with Stephon Diggs. We were saying, like, a lot of these guys, they used to be big names. Now they're not. Same with Keenan Allen. I think Keenan Allen might be a better addition, but again, a guy who's been better out of the slot for most of his career. So I agree. I don't really see the name here that's like, okay, Amari Cooper, who knows? Maybe he's better than he was in Buffalo, but I don't think that they were thrilled. The Amari Cooper, DeAndre Hopkins trades, those both kind of went the same way, where it's like, oh, this is huge. And then in a couple of games, it's like, yeah, they're just non-factors in the offense. So, okay. I think we've kind of covered this position. We're going to actually go over our top 10 wide receivers in the draft here at the end of the show. So we're going to put the draft conversation on the back burner. But ultimately, do you think that they make another move at wide receiver before the season's over or before the season starts?
Okay. They have to, I think. I think we're both in the same boat there. Something has to be done before the season starts, and I think they'll do it. That's the good part about Brett Veach. Like, he's very good about covering his bases before the season starts. It seems like we're never in a situation where it's like, oh my God, Sky Moore is going to have to take 70% of the snaps. It's like, no, there's going to be guys in front of him. There's going to be guys that are familiar with the offense that are going to take these positions and should be in a good spot. I think D tackle is another one of those positions where something's going to be done. Just depends on where he wants to go with it, how the board falls, and yeah, just trust him, Brett Veach, baby. He's done all right this far.
And one thing I think we should clarify too is, like, we've talked about Isaiah Bond. We just talked about McCole Hardman. They've got their type. Christian Kirk was on the market. Do we think that this offense can take another one of those guys? Do we think that we can take another predominant gadget, jet sweep, speed for smaller body? Do you think that they can really pull this off? Or do you think that they have to, like, we're going to talk about the wide receivers in the draft. You can really categorize them. There's the guys who can do it all. There's some slot only guys. There's some guys who are like pretty much pure X's. What do you think?
So it really depends on how they feel about Hollywood Brown at the X. Like, I think it was 71% of the snaps he took in Arizona were from the X. And that's a big percentage. But then again, he wasn't necessarily that effective there. But how effective you really need him to be, I think it all boils down to Hollywood Brown. If they feel comfortable with him being at X and being a predominantly an X player and kind of minimizing what he adds to the offense, then yeah, excuse me. Oh my gosh. I think that's fine.
Yeah, we really need to stop drinking carbonated beverages during the show. Like, I've had a couple of burps. I'm always pulling on an energy drink. This is just like I usually get up around like 5:30 because of the kids, and like I'm starting to drag here. But yeah, we're burping through the show. It's all good. I don't know. I just think this offense could really use some juice on the outside. I'm not calling for a big contested catch, go up and get a guy. There's guys who can bring juice to the outside. I think that's what they need. And then also Rashee Rice can win out there. Like, we talk about Rashee Rice, like he can't possibly wind up out wide. One of his best plays of the year came lined up on the outside over the Nebraska kid from the Bengals. It's escaping me.
Cam Taylor-Britt?
Cam Taylor-Britt. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. But yeah,
right. I Nebraska guy though. I don't know if I can let that slide. That was your dude.
He's a Bengal now, so he's dead to me.
Okay. All right.
Okay. But yeah, I don't know. I think like there is a chance that they could do a Jalen Noel or something like that, but we'll just have to kind of keep an eye on it and see what they think ultimately fits. Let's head over to the cornerback position, one of the last positions that we've not done yet. This one is pretty fun to talk about because it's really in a great position. Currently on the roster, Christian Fulton, Trent McDuffie, Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams, Najee Johnson, and I'm going to go ahead and put Shamari Connor in here just because I looped him in with the safeties as well too. Departing, Keith Taylor. That's really it. That's the only corner that's leaving the roster. So right now, like, do you think that the Chiefs really need another corner body, or are you comfortable going to war with this group?
I mean, I would like one more, but I'm also a DB coach for a high school team. So yeah, I'd love to see more DBs on the roster with lots of talent. My only question about Christian, Christian Fulton, excuse me, is the receptions that he allowed last year. I don't know if you've taken a look at that stat. He allowed 40 receptions last year per PFF. I haven't taken a deep dive into his tape. I know that there were a few plays last year that I saw of him that he looked fantastic, and he's absolutely a Spags type. But again, part of me is like, is that as solidified as our CB2 or CB3, depending on how you look at Jalen Watson, as we think it is? I don't think it precludes them from taking somebody like Jahdae Barron in the first round if he falls, or Kobe Bryant late if he's available. But it does seem to me like a situation where if we went to battle right now with them, we'd be okay. Wouldn't be fantastic, but we'd be pretty damn good.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a scenario that they get out of the draft and they don't take a corner and they could play these guys. Now, what I will say, a couple of things. Christian Fulton last year, the Chargers, they use a really heavy mix and match defense. They do a ton of both. When he played press man, he looked really good. And I think that's where he looks the best. And I think that's, the Chiefs play more press man than any team in the NFL. So that's going to suit him well. More of the off man, where he's got about, 8 to 10 yards of cushion. I think he looked like he was a little nervous about the space. It didn't feel like he could catch up. And also that's kind of his profile too, right? Like he's not a super explosive athlete, more about strength and length than he is just pure athleticism. Makes some nice plays on the ball, but also let's be real. Christian Fulton is not going to play a full 17 games. He's almost never done it. In fact, I don't think he ever has in his career. So Joshua Williams, Jalen Watson, and Najee Johnson, you're eventually going to go back to relying on those guys. Couple of things. I love the Christian Fulton move because I felt like you upgraded at 2 spots. You upgraded at outside corner with him, and then you get an all-pro back in the slot, which Shamari Connor had a target on his jersey, it felt like, for parts of the year. Now, if Jalen Watson can get back to the player he was at the beginning of this year, which was trending towards a top 30, top 20 corner in the league, then yeah, this is definitely a group you can go to war with, because if they have to rely on Najee Johnson or Joshua Williams for a game or two whenever Christian Fulton has his usual injury, you can do it, and that'll be fine. But I would not let that stop me from taking a corner I felt strongly about. If a Trey Amos, someone like that sitting on the board at 31, a Zaire Thomas, a Chavon Ravel, a player like that you feel really strongly about, you've got to take the best player available. And between Jalen Watson, there's lots of dialogue on Twitter today about Trent McDuffie, an extension after the extensions that have been handed out here lately. I could understand it. So I wouldn't let it stop me from taking corner, especially because that Trent McDuffie's been insanely healthy while he's here in KC, but you can't count on that forever. Jalen Watson got hurt last year. Christian Fulton gets hurt regularly. To me, I would not let it stop me from upgrading the position.
Yeah, 100%.
But I feel really good about the position right now.
Yeah. And even if they added somebody like CJ Henderson, somebody just hey, let's throw this in the back, and if it works out, Spags does a really good job about getting the best out of his defensive backs, no matter who they are. Having a former first rounder on the team would be great. Sure. Just adding somebody, I think, would do a little bit more to ease my conscience going into the season than just letting it slide.
And I put that name on our list, by the way, because that's so Brett Veach, right? Former first rounder, never really put it all together, but you could see it. We're talking about CJ Henderson. I don't even remember where he played last year. Originally with the Jags.
Yeah,
and
that's
then
where I remember him.
Just has kind of bounced around too. Caleb Farley, another name, another kind of failed draft guy. Asante Samuel, I don't see working for the Chiefs. He's too small, does not tackle well enough to play corner for the Chiefs. And then Kendall Fuller is back out there, which, I don't think that they would do, but he did mix in at safety for him last time he was on the team. Maybe they just kind of bring him in for the versatility part of it, but he's still sitting out there unsigned. I'd honestly be surprised if they signed a free agent at this point, unless they get an injury. If something happens in camp, then maybe they go to that well. So let's look at the draft. Day one, we'll go ahead and don't worry. The thought crossed my mind with Trent McDuffie going to the slot. I don't think that Jahdae Barron is on the menu for the Chiefs anymore, which sucks because one of my favorite players in the drafts. I know he's one of your favorites.
Yes.
But if
100%.
the Chiefs, I'm just saying, if the Chiefs did draft Jahdae Barron, you now have some leverage if you wanted to like trade Trent McDuffie. I don't think that you should. I don't think you want to. But if Trent McDuffie is going to get $32 million a year or whatever, where this is going, because like the thing that drove me crazy, Athletic Football Show, it's a good podcast. Today they talked about the extension for Derek Stingley Jr. and they just slobbered all over him. That's fine. He's a very talented player. And then they spent the rest of the time talking about Sauce Gardner and how good he is. And, you know, he's got to top this and all this stuff. And then, like, they just didn't talk about Trent McDuffie at all, which, by the way, Trent McDuffie has made more all-pro teams than Stingley has, been the more healthy player. Like, Sauce has made 2 first-team all-pros and 2 Pro Bowls. He's an outside corner, and he's usually put on the number 1 overall receiver. I think that guy should be the top-paid guy. I think McDuffie has the right to go over Stingley because of what he's done. He's gone to the outside, he's gone to the slot, he's made more all-pro teams, and has stayed healthy. So I think there's a chance that like that Sauce should be the last person. But still, you're talking about the $31-32 million range. Trent McDuffie's a star. And what he does, what he brings to the game as far as run defense, I think he's the best run defender of the 3 of them. Sauce is the worst, by the way. But I don't know. To me, I just think that there is a chance that the Chiefs, if they wanted to move off a guy like that, that could be a sort of Tyreek Hill like trade. They're not going to get that same return because like Tyreek Hill's a surefire Hall of Famer and Trent McDuffie is not there yet. But Jahdae Barron, maybe. Some other first round names. Trey Amos out of Ole Miss. He's a guy I really like. Great run defender. One of the few good run defenders in this class for corners, by the way. There's not a lot. Pretty decent ball production. 1 year of starting, though. And then Azareye'h Thomas is another name that I like from Florida State. We talked about Chavon Ravel. We're kind of getting into the day 2 guys. Todd McShay is really big on that. Maxwell Hairston is going in the first round. Tested incredibly. He's from Kentucky. They seem to just always have a stud corner, not a tackler particularly. Darian Porter, another guy who tested really well out of Iowa State. Same thing as Trey Amos, 1 year starting, by the way. He's a 5th-year starter, really stud special teams player. Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame at one point was a top 10 pick. He's fallen down boards. 2 pretty serious hip injuries that could be like a congenital, like reoccurring issue. Or is it just 2 kind of freak things? Not sure there. Dorian Strong from Virginia Tech. To me, he's just a solid player. Like I just look at him and say, like, he does everything pretty well. Another guy that I want to give a shout out to, especially for our local people in the chat, Jacob Parrish. I think he's a slot only guy too. I think like if you told me Jacob Parrish went the 2nd round, I would not be shocked. I think he's a dog. I love the way he plays. He's physical. He's highly athletic. You do not see the lack of size for him in the slot. I really like Jacob Parrish. I think he's a great player. Kansas State has a pretty good reputation with their corners. I love Jacob Parrish. I think he's really good. So if the Chiefs wanted to bring in a slot guy, if they think about kicking McDuffie back out, day 2, Jacob Parrish. Round 3, day 3, Kobe Bryant, 6 foot, 180 pounds. I was pretty glad to see that for him. Like I thought he was a little bit smaller than that on tape. He played mostly outside at KU. I don't know if he'll kick inside or not. He could, but he's a competitor. Just a great tackler. Really brings the juice. A lot of fun to watch. Let's see. Noel Williams out of Cal, high production. Zy Alexander, LSU. Quincy Riley from Louisville. Denzel Burke, talent, not really come all together at Ohio State, and Tommy Hill. So those are some guys that I think like all are high level fits. Any of those names like really jump out to you besides, of course, Jahdae Barron?
So I was lucky enough to talk. I was at a conference I guess it was weeks ago now, for just a football coaching conference. And I actually got to talk to the DB coach from Kansas. I'm blanking on his name right now.
Yeah, I can tell it really made an impact on you.
Yeah, clearly. Well, he was talking fire zones. I was really dug in. But anyway, I asked him about Kobe Bryant. I just nonchalantly, hey, what do you think about him? And he was he said, I really like him in zone. He's like such an instinctual player. And for him to be 6 foot 180, obviously he could pack on a few more pounds at 6 foot. But you talk about a guy that would be a perfect scheme fit for Kansas City. Like, is he going to be Sauce Gardner who can shut down their number 1 wide receiver? No, but he's also going to be a day 3 pick. Like you're looking for like little gems that are really, really good at one thing, not necessarily perfect all around. And I think Kobe Bryant's like a perfect player for that. Like just really fits the system. can do some of the things that we would ask him to do in Kansas City, and he's homegrown. Like, that's perfect fit, right?
Yeah, and I mean, like it for better or worse, they've shown a little bit of propensity to like some of the local guys. There's plenty of tape of Kobe Bryant playing corner in Arrowhead from all the KU games being played in Arrowhead this year. So I do love his mentality. He was one of the best guys at Shrine from what I heard. So I like him. Noel Williams is the guy to me. Long, physical, outside corner, productive. And I really like the idea of bringing in a corner and giving him a little bit of time with Jalen Watson, Josh Williams, because we know they're going to have a big wave of corner leave and free agency this year. So it'll be interesting. I definitely think that there's a chance that they take a corner. And there's a good chance that that's the best player available at 31, at 63, etc. Slight wee-woo, slight news breaking. Juan Thornhill, 1 year to the Steelers. So we will not be back in Kansas City. Not that that super mattered, but I do think that there was a chance that the Chiefs could have just shored up the safety position a little bit because they are pretty young there. But Juan Thornhill to the Steelers. All right. So we alluded to the draft and wide receivers and the value of them there. So we're going to get into our top 10 wide receivers for the draft this year. Now, we're not going to try to, as much as I would love to hash it out over Tet McMillan, I don't think we really have to worry about the Chiefs drafting him because I think he'll be off the board, and I'm not even sure how high of a fit he is. So some of our top two or three guys, they might not be in the Chiefs range, but it's nice to kind of have some dialogue about them. And then we'll kind of get into some of our gyms, some guys we think that will be really fun at the bottom of the draft. So why don't we start at the bottom and work our way up to the top? And where we have overlap, we can kind of cover it. So, Christian, who is your wide receiver 10?
So my wide receiver 10,
and literally, I do mean who, because like we started the podcast, so I was like, who the hell is this guy? So please go on. You found one here.
Yeah. So this is a guy, 6 foot, 195, Chamari Dyke out of Florida. Not a guy a lot of people are talking about, but you throw on his tape and you look at, hey, who's a guy that could come in and be a deep threat that could maybe play at the X? Jameer Dyke is that guy. He's 6 foot, 195, ran a 4.3, 4.40, has a 9.8 RAS score, which is fantastic. Dude, the way he runs his deep routes is next level. And I don't just mean that like because he's going to be good at it playing in the NFL, but it is above what he played against. Like he had a game at Texas where he had 5 catches for 95 yards, and every single one of them, it seemed like Texas knew what was going to happen and they couldn't stop it. And when you look at guys at like round 3, round 4, round 5, somebody that could step up and do that, that's kind of underneath the radar, Dyke is him. And he could absolutely make an impact as somebody, drafted late. We talked about them feeling all right about the wide receiver position. This is absolutely a route they could take. Sort of a late round guy, can play that power slot, can go out and play X if you have to, just eat up downs. The only thing that I don't really like about his game is everything underneath seems to be a little bit foreign to him. It's any kind of drag route, anything over the middle of the field just seems like, not where he loves to be. I don't think he likes getting those safeties running downhill, jamming their shoulder into his head and knocking him out. Other than that, dude, fantastic, great yak. Not necessarily as shifty as you'd like for somebody in the Andy Reid system, but absolutely somebody who could come in and eat up legitimate snaps for the Chiefs.
So I did not have Dyke. What's his first name again?
Jameer.
Okay, yeah. I did not have him in my top 10, probably in my top 20, if I'm going to be honest. I like Samuel Brown, the wide receiver from Miami, but hey, props to you. You coach wide receivers, so I'm open to the fact that you probably know a little bit more than me. And when he's going off, like, by the way, your boy right here was first on Puka Nacua. I was first.
Yes,
on Puka.
He was.
I was not first. I was first on Puka Nacua before Puka Nacua knew he was Puka Nacua. Okay, I have the receipts. So maybe this is our guy. Like if he's going off, you've got your receipts. Tweet them out. Make sure you can follow up on them because it does happen every once in a while that you just hit a diamond in the rough. My number 10 player, and I'm interested. You don't have him in your 10. A hater. Why do you hate Jack Besh, the wide receiver from TCU? I love this guy. First off, this is a guy pure X, can line up on the outside, went on the outside, has played in the slot. Obviously, like when you talk about an offense like TCU, or we'll get to Ole Miss here in a little bit, there's a ton of backside RPO action. Like they almost never run true pass sets. So there's quite a few reps of him just catching a screen and going down tunnel screens, etc. But the thing that I like about Besh, two things. One, ability to win against man coverage. He is big. You're not going to like, there's very few corners are going to be able to get their hands on him and win at the line of scrimmage against Besh. I think he's an above average yak player, and I think he's pretty solid in zone. There's a lot of, man, the amount of TCU, I don't know what they're doing at quarterback next year, but they could use an upgrade. Okay. Open up the NIL, because my God, there's a lot of times that there's Besh sitting there wide open in a zone and the quarterback's eyes go down and it's a sack or a 1 yard gain or something like that out of bounds. But I think he's an above average yak player, blocks his ass off. High character guy, by the way. And this isn't just because of the story that, and if you don't know the story, Jack Besh's brother was tragically killed in the terrorist attack in New Orleans on January 1st or New Year's Eve. He was named the player of the game for the Senior Bowl. He was there at the Super Bowl honoring the victims that happened at New Orleans. He was there on the field. I really love the player, and I think he's really interesting. And I think that his yak ability, like to me, he's an X, but he's not an X that he's just this big lumbering, can only go up and get it type of guy. So Jack Besh for me at 10. Why do you hate Jack Besh?
Oh, I don't hate Jack Besh. I love his teammate a lot more than you do. But what I like about Jack Besh is that you talk about yak, and yeah, some of it's the movement stuff, but also some of it is like just I refuse to go down. Like that George Kittle, it's going to take two guys to tackle me. Like you are not going to tackle me one-on-one. Beat your guy. That's in the purest form of that strategic mindset. That is Jack Besh. I actually didn't know that story about him though. That's very unfortunate. But to me, he wins in one way. It's not something that he can't be somebody who you can play other places. Like you might be able to set him at the Y on the opposite side, but other than that, like I just don't see him as a fantastic scheme fit for Kansas City.
Okay, let's go to your number 9, and your number 9 is
Jalen Noel from Iowa State, which I'm sure you're going to have a lot higher than me. 5'10", 195, runs a 4.39, 9.72 RAS. He's an athlete, man. Like he's a Z, he's a slot, something the Chiefs don't necessarily need. But if he's sitting there in the second round and they take him, I'm not going to be pissed off about it. Like the only thing that you can say bad about him is the drop rate, the 4.8% drop rate, not fantastic. And only a 52% contested catch rate. But if you're drafting Jalen Noel, you're not drafting him to be a contested catch guy. Like it was the same thing with Rashee Rice a few years ago when we drafted him. It's like, yeah, you're a power slot. We're going to put you in space and let you succeed that way. That's exactly the way Jalen Noel is going to play at the next level. Super, super fast feet. Guys like Chad Ochocinco was known for his fast feet, not just because he was big and strong and could catch, anything thrown at him. Jalen Noel has those fast feet, not necessarily same as Chad Ochocinco, but definitely up there. Man, did you watch that Kansas game with him?
Yeah, that's actually that clip. I mentioned it, I think, last week that Jalen Noel and Kobe Bryant got an argument on one of my clips that I posted, because there's a really nice clip of Noel. First off, it's like a heavy personnel. Like they've got 2 tight ends, 2 running backs on the field, and it's a straight play action, like fake to running back, drop back. So it's just true man on man with no safety help over the top. And Noel cooks Kobe Bryant. And Kobe Bryant, I tweeted it out, I literally just said not Jack Besh, Jalen Noel versus Kobe Bryant. And then Kobe Bryant's like, post the rest of the game tape, which to his credit, that was really the only time that he got. But also they were only lined up on each other 3 times because Kobe plays mostly outside. I have Jalen Noel at 5. I might be higher on him than others. I'm a sucker for a guy who can separate. And between his speed, his lateral agility, route running, I just see him as a guy who can separate almost anywhere. And to me, unlike Worthy and some of the other guys the Chiefs have, I think he's a guy who might be able to separate without help, without some of the protection of a stacked formation, motion at the line of scrimmage, some of those things that we see with guys like Xavier Worthy. To me, like I see when I look at him, and it's not just the number 13. I see like a Christian Kirk or like a Hollywood Brown. I think, but he's not as small, right? This guy's 5'10", 194 pounds, and a highly explosive athlete. 9.72 RAS, like you said. Also, love a dog that does everything at the combine. Did everything, including the bench press. 23 on the bench, 4.38 speed, shuttle with the 4.17 and 8.82 three cone, 99 percentile vertical, like 99% broad. Like this is a guy, like he comes down with more contested catches than you would think. He's not necessarily consistent at the catch point, but he comes up with more than you think. There is a little bit of drops on there. Targeted a bunch, by the way. I love a guy also. Consistent growth. Every year got better at Iowa State. Park Hill grad, by the way. So just here in Kansas City, about 20 minutes from where I'm sitting, a local kid. So there's your connection. One thing I'd say, this is not a yak player, right? Like most times he's getting the ball, he's running until he's tackled, and then he's down, right? Not breaking a ton of tackles. Not a guy that you would necessarily want to line up on those tunnel screens or something like that. Someone on the Joshua Clayton here in the chat said Zay Flowers. That's a pretty good comp. I think Zay's got a little bit more straight line speed, but that's not a bad comp. I kind of like the Zay Flowers comp for him as well. I have him at 5. Let's go to your number 8. Who do you have at number 8?
I have Elik Ayomanor from Stanford,
and he's my 9. So
yeah,
what I like about Ayomanor, first off, this is a guy. He is a true X, right? Wins at the catch point. Actually, he's a better route runner than he's given credit for. He's from Stanford, by the way. I don't know if we said that. Probably one of my favorite traits of him, which I hate saying this about wide receiver, blocks his ass off.
Yes,
Best
he
blocking
does.
wide receiver in the draft. He will piss off. Like he's good for at least 1 or 2 scrums after a blocking rep. This is a guy that if you want to bring him in and like he can find the field right away as a blocker.
Oh, yeah. Coaches are going to love him. He's going to go higher than a lot of people think for that very reason. A lot of people have him like at 5, which when you categorize this wide receiver class, I don't know if I can put him. I have him at 8.
I don't see a separator like that. And I don't think the long speed is good enough for him to like, because like to me, I kind of see a diet version of MVS with the size speed combo, but I just don't see the separation for him.
No, he does a good job of not getting rerouted. He's a big enough player, 6'2", 205, where people are not going to, these smaller DBs, if you run him out of the slot, are not going to be able to reroute him. He's going to be able to get down the field. The drops are a problem, though. That's another thing that really, really popped out, and almost a 9% drop rate. So we talked about Jalen Noel having a bit of a drop issue, nearly double that for Elik Ayomanor. I don't think he has very good burst, but if you're talking about an X receiver who's just going to, again, just eat up downs, like as far as a fit for the Chiefs, yeah, he should be great. I think the best game that I had for him that I watched of him was Wake Forest. He had 11 catches for 96 yards. That's when the drops didn't necessarily show up, but he does have that. Like, there's always that worry when you're watching Elik where it's like, is he going to catch this? I know this is a tough catch, but you're a contested catch X receiver. You probably got to catch that. And you're just kind of, it was almost like the MVS experience where like, oh my God, please, dear God, catch it. You're wide open. That's about the same thing for Elik as well.
Yeah, not super consistent, right? Like game to game, there's just some games they kind of disappeared in a little bit. He's my number 9. He was your number 8. Who do you have at number 7?
This one's going to make you mad, and I don't care. We texted about it already. Savion Williams out of TCU. I can't quit him. I can't do it. I watched his tape 15 times. 6'4", 220, 4.45. God damn it, is he fun to watch. Like he played quarterback for Wildcat. He was a wide receiver, the X wide receiver. He played running back a bunch for TCU. My number one thing that I have on here is explosive yak ability. Whether he's catching it over the middle of the field or he's getting it in the backfield, he is absolutely somebody who you say he has the vision, he has the quickness, he has the speed. He's 6'4", which is crazy. I think he's a little bit better releases than people give him credit for. But when it comes to route running, man, you're just like, oh, you got a ways to go there, buddy. Go ahead.
Yeah, so like when I look at him, right, like I think about that like TikTok or Instagram real quote of like, you don't love me, you love the idea of me. You love the idea of a player like him. I think like if you're really looking with rose-colored glasses, you could see a Deebo Samuel. I just don't see that explosive of an athlete though. After the like Debo is so explosive when he gets the ball in his hands, right?
Mm-hmm.
Another popular comp for him is Cordell Patterson. I think this is a guy that if you bring him into an offense and if he's used in the right situation, yeah, I could really see it working. Where you're handing him the ball out of the backfield, the jet sweep game, but he's a big guy. Like this is not a small receiver. A surprisingly quick mover. I like what I've seen from him in several spots. To me, I just don't want the headache of trying to figure out where he's going to win at. If you told me like he ends up having success as this like cool blended part running back, part power slot type of thing, I could see it. But for me, I just don't see a route runner that I feel like is going to come along quickly.
Oh yeah, no, and I don't think that you could put him at a Z or a power slot and be comfortable with him running out of that. I think
he's a good
truly
returner. I will bring that up.
He is.
He had a successful return game.
That ball carrier vision, man, like that's something you can't teach, and that's what I just kept coming back to. Yes, he's a playmaker, and if you put Cordero Patterson on the Kansas City Chiefs offense, and you say, "Hey, listen, he's Cordero Patterson." I think Cordero Patterson's the most yards he ever had in a season was like 1,100 combined, rushing and receiving. You go 1,100 yards as kind of that role, but he can play the X and he can go get a 50-50 ball when you need it the most. I think then you look at a player and you say, oh, that's maybe the perfect fit for Kansas City. Like, I don't know where else he would go, where he would maybe have that big of an impact. But again, man, if you're looking for a fun watch for wide receivers, Savion Williams is the guy you're going to want to spend your time watching. I've watched again. I can't say enough good things about him, but maybe a perfect fit for KC, in my opinion.
I don't know. I'd be interested in the fit. That's for sure. All right. So my first guy that I have ranked that you don't is Jalen Royals. He's in your honorable mention. Jalen Royals out of Utah State. First off, high-level yak guy. He played almost predominantly X at Utah State. Utah State's one of those highly gimmicky offenses, man. Like, it just feels like everything's an RPO, speed option. But I will say this. He has snaps of where he is able to just straight up beat a guy in man coverage down the field for a big completion. He breaks angles as far as a guy over the middle of the field. When he gets the ball in his hands, it's super explosive. I think that right now he's a better route runner than Rashee Rice was coming out. And that's kind of my comp to him, is that like I think he can do a lot of Rashee Rice things. Now I want to go back to the Rashee Rice discussion and that slot conversation we had. I just don't see, like, I think that between, if the Chiefs were to draft Jalen Royals, Rice, Juju, you have enough size there and guys who can rotate in and out of the X. I acknowledge that Royals and what he was asked to do at Utah State, the route tree is fairly limited, and so was the quarterback play. I don't think that you bring in Jalen Royals, you're going to have a guy who's ready week one to be a contributor. In fact, I think it's probably a later time of the year. But his floor is so high as a yak player, I think you could outsource some of the Rashee Rice, tunnel screens, swing passes, those type of things to him. It's going to be just as effective. And then you continue to feed Rashee Rice the reps over the middle of the field, the more mesh concepts, those type of things. And I think Royals can grow into that. I love his burst. Love the burst. Rarely goes down in first contact. Pretty solid tracking the ball too, even over his shoulder. I really like Jalen Royals. He's one of the guys I've kind of planted my flag on this year. He might be my guy as I kind of start narrowing down my board. But to me, he's a guy that I just think the floor is so high for and has had some really big games. And it's hard because, like, I've seen someone today compared him to Sky Moore, and I was just like, no, I'm sorry. They're not close to the same player. His comparison was the level of competition. I was like, he doesn't play in the MAC, right? Like, I posted some clips of him playing Boise State today. They were a fake college football playoff team, but they were in the college football playoff, okay? And players will get drafted from that defense. So I love Jalen Royals. One of my guys, high-level yak player, X, speed, love him.
Yeah, and he's going to get a lot of comparisons to McCole Hardman whenever you talk to Chiefs fans, just because of that burst. Yes, 100%. I've heard.
Yeah, I don't know. He's too big. He's like 6 foot, 190 pounds, or I think he's 6'2", 200.
I've seen multiple people. I mean, it's on X, so you'll have to take it with a grain of salt. But comparing the two, just based off that burst alone, which again, I mean, when you take these comps, you kind of have to be like, what is it? What do you mean by that? It's like,
yeah, 6'6". 6', 205
Yeah.
for him. Yeah, I think like the difference to remember too is like burst and speed. Like Xavier Worthy is a perfect example of speed, not high level burst. Like Worthy gets the ball, those first couple of steps, you're like, he's pretty fast, and then he starts getting the wheels going. You're like, oh, he's gone.
Yeah.
Tyreek was the super rare combination of both. Rashee Rice to me is a guy who's got burst. Like those first 3 or 4 steps, that's where he starts to separate from players, and that's why he's so good in that yak area. All right, so Royals was my number 8. We're on to your number 7. Yep.
6.
Okay. Oh yeah. Okay.
So my number 6 is Jaden Higgins, Iowa State. He's a name that's going to be brought up a lot when we talk about the draft. 6'4", 215, runs a 4.47, 9.87 RAS. Very, very big, very, very athletic wide receiver. Definitely an X. I think you can look at him. You can say, hey, play the big slot. Play the big slot sometimes. And I think he's got quick enough feet to be able to do that. But I think where he's really going to shine is at that X position, where he can use his hands on the line. There are so many clips of him just swiping by a DB trying to play press. And I think this is a guy you could see climb. I have him at 6. I could see some teams having him much higher, up there with maybe a Trey Harris or somebody like that. He's not super deceptive, though. That's my one critique is like, as a wide receiver, you can be slow, you can be fast, you can be big, you can be weak. But you have to be deceptive. Very, very few wide receivers can get away with not being deceptive. I think Jaden Higgins might be able to do that. Like DeAndre Hopkins, not the most deceptive player of all time. The problem is if his hand touched a football, he was catching it. I kind of see that same exact thing with Jaden Higgins. Not very much yak ability, definitely big. He just seems like a Green Bay type of receiver to me. You know, like one of those wide receivers that comes from a smaller school that's just going to come out and play ball and be fantastic. And then, you know, outshine everybody's expectations, and people are going to wonder how he fell. And if you're asking me if Jaden Higgins would be a perfect fit for the Chiefs, yes, absolutely. He comes in, he's your X. He's a reliable target for Patrick Mahomes. And you feel good about maybe pick 62 or 63.
Yeah. Boy, I don't know. Guys this big who move that well, they're not on the board for long, right? And that's the thing about Jaden Higgins is that he tested really well. 98 percentile athlete, 6'4", 214, a 4.47 40-yard dash on a 10-yard split was 1.58, but 92% broad, 92% broad or vertical. I mean, I don't know. Like 63 would be pushing it for a guy like him because to me, there's not a lot of true X's in this class. There rarely is with college football anyways, but he's one of the few guys that I feel that way. He's my number 7, so we're very close on him. I really like the ability to go up and get it. I don't think that he's a nothing in the yak game either. Like I do think that he does have some moderate yak skills. The speed is all right. Like I like him, and I thought you summed up him really well. So let's move on here. You just mentioned him. Let's talk about Trey Harris. He's your 4B because you're being indecisive and can't pick a 5. He's my number 6. To me, like I think we both agree the best pure X in this game is Tet McMillan.
Yes.
And in this class is Tet McMillan. And then like to me, Trey Harris is my next best X. And to me, it just came down to, I think that he's a little bit more explosive than Higgins. I think the yak is a little bit better for Trey Harris than it is for Jaden Higgins. And I think the production's been a little bit better. Trey Harris has had some really big games. He's a yards per route run darling. I like him better down the field too than I do like Higgins. I thought like Harris had a little bit of ability to separate at the end of the route.
Yeah. Dude, that dog, man. No, I love Trey Harris. 6'2", 205, runs a 4.5. Like, absolutely a big guy. My number one note that I have down here is dominating presence. When you watch that game against LSU with the 7 catches for 102 yards and 1 touchdown, at some points in the game, the entire LSU defense knows where it's going, and he catches it anyway. And the Chiefs aren't a team that likes to utilize the X a lot. And I think part of that is because they haven't really had that dominant guy that can come in and make plays like that. Trey Harris is somebody who you can see taking over a game. Fantastic contested catch. Better long speed than a lot of people give him credit for. I know that 4.54 kind of throws a few people off. Very, very fast. Definitely has the breakaway speed. And just above average feet, great hands. He just seems like a well-rounded player that excels at one part of the game. And when you're talking about first round, early second round players, you look at guys, hey, can you do what we ask you to do? And can you do one thing? Fantastic. Can you be above and beyond better at one specific part of your game? And that's exactly what Trey Harris is. Like, could be a yak guy, but he's going to be more Gronk than he is Kelsey. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to be dragging people. He's not going to be weaving in and out of traffic. But absolutely somebody who can do multiple things, who does one thing, be in that X incredibly well. That's why I couldn't put my other 5A above him, just because I think they both do what they do so incredibly well. I couldn't. You're splitting hairs between them. What do you like more?
So yeah, for me with Trey Harris, it's the vertical part of the game that I like more with him than Higgins. I had Jalen Noel at number 5. Again, the separation skills there. So now we have the same top 4. I have it going. My wide receiver 1's Matthew Golden. 2 is Luther Burden. 3, Emeka Ibuka. 4, Tet McMillan. My question to you is, how are you, the Mizzou alum, lower on Luther Burden than me?
I don't know. And you know what's funny? If you flip our list, they're the exact same. I go Matthew Golden, Luther Burden, Ibuka, and then Tet McMillan as my number 1. Man, I don't know. I just feel like he was held back a lot by Brady Cook. This is a player I've seen play every single snap of his college football career. I just feel like he left some meat on the bone. And that's not to say that he isn't a fantastic player who could come in, play anywhere as a wide receiver, at the X, at the Y, at the Z, and be effective. I can't leave that. You see wide receivers all the time that are fantastic and they don't leave meat on the bone. Like we talked about Amari Cooper as an option early in his career. He was fantastic. Who was the Raiders quarterback during that time? Derek Carr. Like, okay, average, above average quarterback. He moves all over the place. He's still fantastic. He goes to Cleveland. He's fantastic. He goes to Dallas. He's fantastic. It's like some of those players, when you're that level, and if I'm going to put you up here with Ibuka or Tet McMillan, like, you have to be fantastic no matter what the situation. And part of me is just a little hesitant to put Luther Burden up there in that conversation. Also crossing my fingers, hoping he falls to 31 so we can pick him.
Here's my thing about Burden, and I think this is true of a lot of players, especially with Burden and Ibuka. Too many people measure draft, especially first-round picks, on the ceiling and not the floor. Burden's ability as a yak receiver and his agility, like that, to me alone, he's probably the best yak guy in the draft. And I feel pretty comfortable in saying that. Like, that's a draftable skill, especially the way the contemporary NFL is. I like him at the catch point. I think he's one of those guys. He's not on this level, but he gives me a little bit of Jamar Chase vibes, where it's like you watch him play and you're like, he's only 6 foot. He's only 200 pounds. Like, he seems so much bigger than he plays. And I'm always a sucker for a guy who was the offense. And I know Cody Schrader was really good last year, but he is the offense. Since he's come on to Mizzou, he's been the offense. He's had some production in the punt return game early in his career. They were feeding him the ball in jet sweeps and screens, and he's grown from there. So I do think that every team goes into the game trying to stop him. That matters to me. Just to talk about a couple of the other guys, like, do I see a situation that Luther Burden could be on the board at 31? Yes. I think there's a chance that Chiefs pass on him, even if he is on the board at 31, because I do think, again, there's a little bit of overlap there. And I do think he is a guy who needs a little bit more yak designed than maybe a guy we just talked about, Trey Harris and Jaden Higgins. Emeka Ibuka, such a high floor player. To me, like, I really wish it's kind of the Ladd McConkey dialogue all over again. I think Ladd was a little bit more explosive than Ibuka is, but I love Ibuka. I think he's a great blocker. I think he does a lot of really refined routes, solid at the catch point, not a go up and get it guy, but I just have a hard time seeing him fail. So for me, that's where I sit on those two guys. You want to talk about Tet McMillan for a second?
Yeah, sure. To me, this is part of its pedigree, part of its, starting off the season with 10 receptions for 304 yards and 4 touchdowns. And part of it's just looking at the potential. When you see a guy that's 6'4", 220, and I don't know if you saw this today yet, Price, ran a 4.48 40 times.
Yeah. Pro day 40.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Okay,
I saw
all right.
reports from 4.54 to 4.48. So
Okay, but in that
those
area,
Arizona stuff. Yeah. Here's what I'll say. I'm props to him for actually doing it. I didn't know if he was actually going to run a 40. I thought he was just going to take the Drake London path and just not run a 40. So
I
at least he
wouldn't have.
did it.
Yes, yeah, and when you're a guy that size who people think you lack explosiveness, you're not going to give them more reason to think that whenever you're, doing your combine day or your pro day stuff. So running a 4.46 again, grain of salt, kinda. I think that he would probably run a 4.5, which is about what that is. Dude, I really see him as like this huge power slot that can play X, and he's just going to be a monster just down the field. I see him do something that I don't see a lot of college players do, which is set up DBs early in the games, whether you're doing a runoff because there's a run to your side or you run a route incorrectly 1 or 2 times to set them up for that last one. That game against Colorado, man, he only had 5 receptions for 38 yards, but he was having Travis Hunter shadowing him the entire game, and his quarterback left approximately 300 yards on the board because of how bad he played. He was just open consistently, late in the route, early in the route. And that was one of the first games that I had exposure to both Tet McMillan and Travis Hunter. And it really made me question Travis Hunter's DB abilities. Now, he did a pretty good job. I mean, he held him to 5 for 38, but it's like, okay, I've never even heard of this McMillan guy. And you're supposed to be the number 1 pick in the draft or the number 2 pick in the draft. Like, you're supposed to be leagues above this dude. Now later it comes out, McMillan's actually a beast, but you see him do that stuff against this high level competition. And you think he'd look pretty damn good in the red and gold, that he's not going to fall that far. But I mean, could you see him being a top 15, 20 pick just based on the profile, the athletic profile? Absolutely.
I think for me, like, fit is just going to be really important for him.
Yes.
Like, if he goes to the Patriots, I'll be really concerned about him because or like the Giants or some team like I think he's going to do best in a system where they have an explosive option, because I think that, like, I don't see a super high natural separator for him. Now, he's got the skills to overcome that, but I would love to see him go somewhere where he's the 1B. And, there's some explosiveness in the offense besides just him.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And that people are going to look at him and see sort of a DeAndre Hopkins-esque player who's like not a fantastic separator.
Mike Evans.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm afraid that's going to pigeonhole him when he gets to the NFL. Also, the drop rate for him is a little bit high, 7.7%. Not the worst in the class by far, but definitely something you need to worry about. Man, I couldn't get away from the size and the speed profile of him.
To me, I mean, it's really the wide receivers from last year, a great example of that. You look at what the situation was with, like, Brian Thomas Jr. and what he was asked to do, how productive he was, and then you look at what the kid from Ohio State, like, they were not very creative with him, and he had the most disappointing season out of all of them. He was the top drafted guy. So it really just kind of matters what situation they land in. So, Chiefs, wide receivers, there's lots of names to like. A couple of, like, day 3 names I'll throw out there, some gems. Keandre Lambert-Smith, he's from Auburn, 5th-year player, explosive. Rock Taylor from Memphis, a nice big body, yak ability guy. Zachary Franklin from Illinois. Xavier Restrepo, high-level route runner, another kind of older player, probably slot only, but probably one of the best route runners. I'll say Isaiah Bond's name because he matches the Chiefs so much. Will not be shocked at all if they just, like, all right, we're going to plug Bond into McCole Hardman's role and just be the fastest offense in the NFL, which I think that they would be. Troy Horton from Colorado State, a dog, threw a sweet-ass touchdown to Dallin Hoker against in that really big late-night game against Colorado a couple years ago. That was sweet. But those are some of my guys. Anyone you want to shout out before we get out of here?
No, Xavier Restrepo, I love watching him play, man. Like, that's another player that you look at and you're like, if you just want to watch good tape, watch Xavier Restrepo. Like, polished route runner, a dog, somebody who will not go down. You just wish he was 6'1" and had a faster 40. That's the only thing you don't like about him.
Yeah, but just gets open. So
Yep.
well, that's going to do it for us here today. Thank you for joining us on St. Patrick's Day. We covered all the wide receivers. We'll kind of be doing this too for the running backs and some of the other positions that are kind of high level needs for the Chiefs. We'll probably break down tackle as well too, of course. But we'll be locked in on the draft all season long. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for producer Richard doing a great job. Thank you, Christian, for joining us. And as always, go Chiefs.